Okay, so it's more nuanced than just saying pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the interplay between individual agency and the structures that shape our lives.
Right. And this raises a really important question. How do we support individual growth while simultaneously pushing for systemic change? How do we walk and chew gum at the same time, so to speak?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's easy to get caught in the trap of either it's all about personal responsibility or it's all about dismantling the system. But maybe it's not about choosing sides, but finding ways to integrate both approaches.
I think you're onto something there because ultimately both individual and collective efforts are necessary for lasting change. It's like building a house. You need strong individual bricks, but you also need a solid foundation and a well-designed structure to hold everything together.
I like that analogy. So maybe it's less about pitting these ideas against each other and more about seeing them as complementary forces, like personal growth can fuel the movement for social justice, and a more just society can create more opportunities for individual flourishing.
Exactly. It's a symbiotic relationship. And the more we can bridge those two worlds, the more effective we'll be in creating a truly equitable and prosperous society.
Okay, so we're moving beyond this simplistic idea of choosing a different culture and into a more complex understanding of how culture, agency, and societal structures all intersect.
Right. And I think that's where the video, despite its provocative language and potentially problematic framing, can actually be a valuable starting point for a deeper conversation.
So even though we might not agree with everything the creator says or the way they say it,
Yeah,
there's still something to be gained from engaging with their perspective.
absolutely. Because it challenges us to confront our own assumptions and to think critically about how we approach these complex issues. And ultimately, that kind of critical thinking is essential for progress.
I'm starting to see how this video, even with its controversial elements, can be a catalyst for growth. It's like a mental workout. It might make us uncomfortable at times, but it ultimately strengthens our ability to grapple with these complex realities.
Exactly. And the more we can engage in these kinds of thoughtful discussions, the more equipped we'll be to navigate the challenges and create the kind of world we want to live in.
This conversation is really pushing me to think differently about these issues, but I also want to make sure we're not losing sight of the potential pitfalls of this line of thinking.
Oh, absolutely. It's crucial to be aware of those pitfalls. For example, we have to be careful not to fall into the trap of victim blaming or dismissing the very real impacts of systemic oppression.
Right. It's not about saying you just need to work harder when someone is facing deeply ingrained systemic barriers. It's about understanding that everyone has a different starting point and that those starting points are often determined by factors outside of their control.
Exactly. We need to balance this focus on individual agency with a deep understanding of the historical and societal context that shape people's lives.
Okay, so we're holding two ideas in tension here: the power of personal choice and the reality of systemic constraint. It's a delicate balance.
It is, and that's where things get really interesting because it forces us to move beyond simplistic solutions and into a more nuanced understanding of how we can create a more just and equitable world.
And to do that, we need to be willing to have uncomfortable conversations, challenge our own biases, and listen to diverse perspectives.
Couldn't agree more, because it's in those messy, uncomfortable spaces that real growth and transformation can happen.
Well, this deep dive has certainly taken us to some messy and uncomfortable places, but I think it's been a valuable journey so far.
I agree. We've explored the complexities of the video's arguments, challenged our own assumptions, and started to unpack the interconnectedness of individual agency and social justice.
And we're not done yet. There's still more to uncover as we continue to explore alternative perspectives on this fascinating topic. So, as we've been kind of like dissecting this video and its arguments,
Yeah.
I keep coming back to this idea of like choosing a different culture.
Right.
It sounds empowering, in theory.
Sure.
But I'm really wrestling with how that plays out in the real world.
Yeah, it's definitely a concept that warrants a deeper examination.
Yeah.
Because while the video frames it as a personal choice, the reality is that cultural influences are incredibly complex.
Right.
And often very deeply ingrained.
It's not like walking into a cultural supermarket and picking out the values that you want off the shelf. Right?
Exactly.
You're shaped by your family, your community, the media you consume, countless factors that are really hard to just shed overnight.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's where some might critique the video for placing too much emphasis on individual agency while potentially downplaying the influence of those larger forces.
Yeah.
Like, how much agency can you truly exercise if you've been surrounded by a certain set of norms and beliefs your entire life?
It's like telling someone who grew up in a food desert, just choose to eat healthy.
Right.
Easier said than done when your environment limits your options.
Right. Exactly. And that's why it's essential to bring in those alternative perspectives, to consider the systemic factors that limit people's choices and opportunities.
Right.
For example, if we're talking about crime and culture, we can't ignore the historical and ongoing impact of things like poverty, segregation, and unequal access to education and resources.
So it's not about saying personal responsibility doesn't matter, but about recognizing that it exists within a much larger context.
Precisely. It's about understanding that individual choices are shaped by the environment in which those choices are made.
Yep.
And that environment is often heavily influenced by forces that are beyond any one person's control.
Okay, so if we're going to talk about choosing a different culture,
Right.
we have to acknowledge that some people are starting from a completely different cultural landscape than others.
Yeah.
And those landscapes can be incredibly difficult to navigate, let alone change.
Absolutely. And that's where the conversation needs to expand beyond individual choices to encompass a more systemic approach.
Okay.
We need to be talking about things like investing in under-resourced communities, addressing racial disparities in education, and the criminal justice system creating pathways to opportunity that are accessible to everyone, regardless of their background.
It's like instead of just telling people to choose a different path, we
Yeah.
need to be working to pave those paths and make them more accessible to everyone.
Exactly. It's about creating a more level playing field where everyone has a genuine opportunity to thrive regardless of the circumstances they were born into.
This is really challenging me to think more critically about the messages we encounter, even those presented with good intentions.
Yeah.
Because even when we're talking about something as positive as personal growth,
Right.
we can't separate that from the societal context in which it's happening.
And that's the beauty of engaging with diverse perspectives.
Yeah.
It forces us to refine our own thinking and to see the world through a wider lens.
This whole deep dive has been like holding two seemingly opposing ideas in tension, individual agency and social responsibility,
Yeah.
and trying to figure out not which one is right, but how they can coexist and inform each other.
And that's a tension worth holding on to because it pushes us to move beyond simplistic solutions and to grapple with the complexity of these issues, because there isn't a one-size-fits-all answer. It's about individual and collective efforts working in tandem to create a more just and equitable world.
We started this deep dive exploring a video that presented a pretty provocative take on crime and culture. And through our conversation, we've uncovered so many layers of nuance, so many thought-provoking questions.
We've challenged the video's arguments, explored alternative perspectives, and ultimately, I think, arrived at a more nuanced understanding of this incredibly complex issue.
And that's what it's all about, right? Pushing ourselves to think critically, to engage with different viewpoints, even those we might initially disagree with, and to ultimately arrive at our own informed conclusions.
Exactly, because that's how we grow, both individually and as a society. It's through those challenging conversations, that willingness to grapple with complexity, that we can truly create positive change.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this. What kind of culture do you want to be a part of?
Yeah.
One that solely emphasizes individual responsibility, one that focuses exclusively on systemic change, or one that finds a way to bridge those two worlds, creating a space for both personal growth and collective progress?
That's a powerful question to ponder. And ultimately, the answer lies within each of us. It's about making conscious choices, engaging in meaningful dialogue, and taking action to create the kind of world we want to see. We're going to be looking at this YouTube video,
Okay.
and it's called Why Cultural Appropriation is Woke Racism. Stop Gatekeeping Culture.
Interesting.
It's from the channel Aquarius Wave, and we're basically going to be trying to unpack this YouTuber's perspective on cultural appropriation and all the sort of arguments they make connecting it to gatekeeping, personal agency, even victimhood.
Sounds pretty churched.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
So the video starts off, and the YouTuber is describing a TikTok video.
Okay.
And that kind of set off this whole discussion for them. And they say that, they're looking for a productive way to talk about cultural appropriation, a concept that they only really became aware of in their late teens, early 20s.
That's interesting. So they're coming at it with fresh eyes.
Kind of, yeah, not fully indoctrinated you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And one of the first things they say is, you know, they find this whole concept of cultural appropriation kind of confusing.
Okay.
And specifically, they talk about like the seemingly arbitrary way it's applied.
Yeah.
Like, why are some things okay and others aren't?
Yeah.
And they use this example.
Yeah. What examples do they use?
Well, they say, like, black women wearing blonde hair versus white women with braids.
Oh. Yeah, and how those two things get very different reactions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, where's the line?
Yeah.
And who gets to decide? It is really tricky.
And then to kind of illustrate this point further,
Sure.
they react to a video that they saw where a non-Asian person is wearing a rice farmer hat
Okay.
and is like getting criticized for it. But then they contrast that with the reactions that they got from like actual elderly Chinese people in Chinatown who were not offended at all. Some were even complimentary.
Interesting. So it's like the perceived versus actual offense?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they even bring up the renaming of the Washington Redskins.
Oh, yeah.
And they point out that the family of the man whose image was used for the logo actually wanted it to remain.
Oh, wow. It's like the unintended consequences of trying to be culturally sensitive.
Yeah. And then, so to further challenge this notion that certain hairstyles are off limits, they bring up Beyonce, you know, Queen Bey
Oh, yeah.
and her blonde hair.
Oh, right. Yeah. That makes sense. If she can do it, why can't anybody else?
Yeah. And it's interesting. This is where I think it starts to get a little
Yeah.
spicy.
Yeah.
And so the YouTubers suggest that a lot of the outrage over cultural appropriation might actually be rooted in something a little less noble. Jealousy.
Ooh.
They say that seeing someone else doing you better than you can be a major trigger
Oh, that's a good point.
for this kind of gatekeeping.
Yeah, like a psychological
Yeah.
component to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really
So it's less about like, oh, you know, this is actually harming this culture, and more about like,
right.
oh, you're doing it better than me and I don't like it.
Yeah, and I want to be the one that's cool.
Exactly.
Right.
And then speaking of like kind of getting into uncomfortable territory, the YouTuber then argues that all cultures have been influenced by one another,
Okay.
right? Like cultural exchange, they're not
Yeah.
denying that that happens.
Right.
And they cite examples like the introduction of horses
Okay.
to North America by Europeans, like the spread of foods across continents.
Right.
You know, how language evolves.
Yeah.
They even mentioned Thomas Sowell,
Oh, wow.
and his research on the historical roots of Ebonics and Southern dialect.
Wow. So they're really
Bringing in
the receipt.
yeah, like all these different examples.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
look,
yeah.
cultures have always kind of borrowed and adapted and evolved.
Right. It's not like cultures
Totally.
exist in a vacuum.
Exactly. And this is where I think it takes a really interesting turn.
Okay.
They start talking about personal agency as a solution to feeling victimized by cultural appropriation. They say that focusing on external factors that cause offense keeps people stuck in a victim mentality,
Uh-huh.
which leads to all this like negativity, oppression, dysfunction.
Yeah. So instead of blaming the external forces, you kind of look inward.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they're saying, like, contrast that with the empowerment of taking control of your emotions and making different choices to change your life.
Okay. So like we have more agency than we think we do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They actually go on to call the entire cultural appropriation mindset foolish, unhelpful, and a waste of energy.
So they're not pulling any punches.
No, they're really going for it.
Yeah.
They really think that this focus on cultural appropriation
Right.
is detrimental to personal growth and societal progress.
It's a distraction from real issues.
And instead of dwelling on feeling offended, they urge listeners to focus on self-improvement and taking productive actions in their own lives.
Yeah. Get busy with living.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, you know, stop complaining and do something.
Yeah.
What do you think so far?
I mean, it's definitely provocative. It's interesting that they're emphasizing this personal responsibility angle.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complex issue.
Yeah.
There are valid concerns about power dynamics and, you know,
Yeah.
exploitation and all of that. But
Right.
it is interesting to consider, like, you know, maybe we do have more control over our own reactions than
Yeah.
we think we do.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
And I think their emphasis on personal agency is really compelling.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but before we like go too deep into that,
Yeah.
I kind of want to like rewind a bit
Okay.
and revisit some of the specific examples they use.
Okay.
Like the whole Beyonce blonde hair versus white women with braids.
Yeah. What about it?
Well, it just seems like they're trying to highlight the double standard.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, totally. Like, why is one okay and the other one isn't?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it kind of raises questions about like who has the authority to define and police these cultural boundaries.
Right.
And it goes back to their point about, if cultures have always borrowed and adapted from one another,
right,
then where do we draw the line?
Yeah. Where does appreciation become
Yeah.
appropriation?
Right.
And who gets to decide that?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's what makes this video so interesting is that
Yeah.
they're willing to challenge
Yeah.
conventional thinking, ask these uncomfortable questions.
Right. Yeah. It's not about
Yeah.
giving easy answers or dictating a certain viewpoint, but it's about getting us to think critically
Totally.
and examine our own assumptions and biases. And ultimately, I think it's about empowering us to take ownership of our own experiences and choices,
Totally well said.
which in the end, I think is what,
Yeah.
true freedom and agency are all about.